So I've been an X-Files fan for years, going back to like 1993. I mean, I really got it on the ground floor with the original series. But I did want to point something out, which is that aside from the bad acting and the bad writing and breaking continuity and a lot of things that were wrong just in terms of entertainment and as a TV show, as the quality of the TV production, with the 2016 attempted X-Files comeback, there's another thing that I think people are overlooking. People are talking about how bad some of the stories were and the writing and the acting, and yeah, that's all true. That they broke continuity, that they rehashed original ideas but did them even worse. That's all true too. All right. But there's another thing that I think is important to consider, which is that if you were to ask me in 1995 what Mulder and Scully's politics were, I couldn't tell you. All right? Think about that. That's an amazing thing to say about a character in a TV program today. And, I mean, you could make assumptions, right? You know, Mulder probably doesn't trust the government all that much. You know, Scully doesn't like, religious fundamentalism. She's Catholic, ironically, but if you remember the episode Signs and Wonders with the snake handlers, yeah, she was very adamant about her disapproval of fundamentalist religion. So, okay, Scully's probably not a Bible thumper, and Mulder probably is, distrustful of the government. Those are general observations about general things, right? If you were to ask me specifically what are their politics, Mulder and Scully, and I was looking just at the original 9 seasons, I couldn't tell you. Again, I could make some assumptions about what we know about them as characters, as if they were real people. Of course, they're fictional characters, but I couldn't tell you specifics because the show never went into that. Contrast that with the 2016 reboot, where, we clearly know what the politics of the show is supposed to be. It's somewhat to the left of Oliver Stone, and we clearly know what the politics of the characters are, at least of Mulder, and did we need that kind of a politicized X-Files? Maybe if they spent some of that effort on trying to tick all the boxes to say, hey, look how groovy and current we are. We're down with all your, whatever is the most popular view. Whereas in the original X-Files, they dealt with political issues. They dealt with everything from, logging and eco-terrorism to nuclear waste, creating mutants to, governmental cover-ups. So some of the stories did deal with issues where there was a question of politics. Some of them were simply current events at the time that were used to tell a good story. Others were stories where it really did delve into a political issue, but they never became overtly political. The closest they came to politics were the agents debating or making points in general terms about overall philosophical or basic issues, such as in one of the episodes of season 1, where Mulder famously says, and no government agency has jurisdiction over the truth. That's a sentiment that I'd like to think most of us could agree with, wherever we fall in the political spectrum. You don't have to be a Democrat or a Republican to find something there that's worthy of advocating. I've actually said that this is the best line ever, and it really is. It's about the primacy of reality over agendas, and about the respect for that reality, and wanting to fight for it and champion that, and not because you have a particular bet, but just because it's the truth, and that's all you need to know, right? And the idea that somebody shouldn't have jurisdiction over the truth, somebody shouldn't try and manage it, somebody shouldn't have control over it, that it's accessible to all of us because it's based on the reality of the real world, not politics, right? And one of the best lines ever. And don't get me wrong, there were a lot of lines in the X-Files that I think had relevancy beyond the fictional world of the fictional program itself. When Mulder and Scully got up there and made her when Scully in particular got up there and made the statement in I think it was the 1996 season, where she said She was called before a congressional hearing, and she said, "There is a culture of lawlessness within the government that is keeping me from doing my job." Wow, right? I mean, that. Take the current political scandal of your pick, whether at the national, state, or local level, and apply that statement right there. It fits. Whether you're talking about a Democrat or a Republican or whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is that government involves a certain amount of power, and wherever there's power, there are going to be people who abuse it. That statement was true in the 1990s when it was made. It was true in 2009. It'll be true in 2049. And of course, it's true today. Which brings me to something I don't understand why they felt they needed to make the X-Files updated or current. If they were going to try and continue the stories, that's one thing. As long as they get good stories to tell, they were going to build on the show rather than detract from it. But why did they feel they needed to make it more hip and politically clued into the prevailing ideas of the times? The X-Files was never not relevant. That was its genius. Because it didn't tie itself down to specific, narrow political issues. And again, even when it did use something that was in the current events at the time, like logging or eco-terrorism, it just used them to tell a good story, right? I can watch an X-Files episode from 1993, and it's as interesting to me today as it was when I first saw it as a wide-eyed kid or a teenager. But I cannot imagine anybody 20 years from now watching episodes from the 2016 reboot without hearing the tired, hackneyed political jargon that they put in there and saying to themselves, "Oh God, this is cringeworthy," right? Whereas when you hear the statements from the original X-Files seasons, season 1 through 9, where they do touch on issues of, government accountability or things like that, because the statements are more general, they're not narrowed down to a particular, whatever was trending on Twitter at the moment. They can appeal across the board to many more people, and they almost seem to have a Sage-like quality now. I mean, there are literally compilations of X-Files quotations, all right? The show was well known for producing good lines, for producing lines that had, meaning not just in the context of the fictional program in which they were uttered, but to the lives of the viewers and to their observations about real life. And that, I think, is what a good fictional program can do. It can sometimes it can tell a story that's actually relevant in the real world, no matter how fantastical that story is in fiction. And the characters can make observations that are relevant in the real world, no matter how fantastical their observations are in fiction. And, we see this with other things that have spawned huge fan followings. The original Star Wars trilogy, for example. There is a reason it is so popular. Some of the later movies that are controversial, there's a reason that they're controversial. I'm not going to get into that. But just to say that sometimes when you keep things more general, it allows you to appeal to a wider audience, and it's going to last better, weather better, hold up better in the long run, right? Shakespeare deals with political themes. He deals with a lot of themes: love, hate, war, political succession, when the king is killed, etc. He deals with a lot of themes that are, serious stuff. But you have to remember, Shakespeare was also the pulp entertainment of its day, the popular entertainment of its day. What does that mean? Well, they couldn't afford to alienate audiences back then. And if you'll notice, a lot of the stuff, Shakespeare is just one example, a lot of the stuff that has stood the test of time as good storytelling doesn't get too specific. It gets just specific enough to tell the story and doesn't get bogged down in political details that will be irrelevant in 5 years, right? I could picture somebody in 2046 watching the video clip of President Bush Jr. in the X-Files 2016 season and say to themselves, "Who the F is this old guy?" Right? Because by then it's not going to be, like nobody will be around who remembers him. So, or at least, you've seen him in history class maybe, but that's it. So, stuff that to us, it's we have to focus on it, and this is the issue. And in reality is, 20, 30, 40, 100 years from now, nobody's going to remember it. But they will remember broader, more general statements about right and wrong and love and hate and things that we can all get behind. And that's where the X-Files excelled. In its original series, it always touched on issues that were pregnant with politics, but it never got stuck in a political rut and never beat you over the head with them. And if you were to ask me what Mulder and Scully's politics were in the original series of the X-Files, I actually couldn't tell you. If I was to watch the original 9 seasons, as I have many times, and you were to ask me, okay, so what Mulder and Scully, are they Democrat, Republican, what? I'd be like, I don't know. I mean, I could make some assumptions. You know, Mulder probably doesn't trust the government. Is an easy one. You can tell we're dealing with a real mind here, right? Anybody should get that. But the point is that beyond that, I couldn't tell you. They never go into it, right? If you had to say for sure, what were Mulder and Scully's politics in the original X-Files? I don't know. Now, if you asked me to watch the 2016 series or season again, which I'm never going to do, but if you asked me to do it, and then said, what are Mulder and Scully's politics? I actually could tell you now. And that, I think, again, it's not just the writing. It's not just the acting being lame. It's not just that the storytelling was subpar compared to the original X-Files. It's that, you know, they took something that was a strength of the program, that it didn't alienate half the viewers or half the ideological spectrum, and it's turned that on its head and said, this thing, it's a strength. Nope. We're doing that wrong. Let's change it. I don't know about you. I don't know if I would have ever become a fan of the show in the 1990s if I'm watching the first episode and the first thing it does is try to belittle me or what I think. Right? I don't think that would be a good way to garner a widespread audience. And I hate to tell you, but you're going to need a widespread audience. You can't just content yourself with a handful of virtue signaling Twitter mobsters. You're going to need wider appeal than the one or two people who are okay with a politicized show that actually spends more time on that than it does on telling good quality stories. And just to throw something out there, I don't have a problem with politics in a story if it's part of the story and it works. Right? I have a problem with shoehorning it in or putting it in there in a way that's disrespectful to the characters or to the audience. And, Mulder said it best in the first season of the X-Files when he was talking to Scully, and he said, in our investigations, we may not always see eye to eye, but at least you respect the journey. Well, the new X-Files, 2016, and whatever the new one was that I didn't see, they haven't respected the original characters or the fans or the journey that we're on together. And so, yeah, I'm not... Some people may like it. If that's so, fine. But I think if you were to watch... If you think the new ones are good, watch the original ones because you'll be blown away. They're so much better. And I understand. Not everybody's going to get turned off to blanket politicking in there. Maybe that's just the standard now. Everything involves blanket politicking. You got to either have evil oil companies or, something. But here's the thing. A guy that's a caricature of Bill O'Reilly. I mean, how much can we make this a dig at, I don't know, half the political spectrum in the country, right? And again, you may not be bothered by that, either because you agree with it or because you just don't see it as, that's what people are used to now, so they don't see it as a problem. I'm telling you that it detracts from storytelling, and the original X-Files was so much better because it didn't have that in it. Okay? Not only did it show respect to its entire fan base rather than just a small part of it, in terms of their other beliefs outside of the X-Files, it also made for better storytelling, right? Because they didn't have to shoehorn things in there and put things in there that would have been out of place. and create characters that are seemingly there just to be talking points for political jabs. So yeah, if you were to ask me what Mulder and Scully's politics were in 1995, I couldn't have told you. You ask me that now, I could tell you. And I think that's sad, right? Because while we're spending all our focus on that, and while we're alienating all our fans with that, what aren't we doing? We're not telling a good story, right? And if they put politics in that I didn't agree with, and it was part of the story and it made sense and it was, fine. You're telling a good story. That's part of it. But the point is, they put politics in and they didn't tell a good story. And they're crapping on half their fan base. So yeah, not cool. I think we were better off when, if you were to ask me, what is Mulder, a Democrat or a Republican, I'd have to say, I can't tell you. Right? I'd have to say, I can't tell you. We know what David Duchovny is. He's a staunch Democrat. But his character, Agent Mulder, I honestly don't know. Well, again, you can extrapolate some things. He probably didn't trust the government very much. But beyond that, okay, is he Democrat, Republican, Libertarian? What? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. He never said. Maybe that's the way it should be. Lone Rider out.